And we're back on another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy, where we have a casual and informal conversation about Star Trek. And no, this is not the show where we do that drunk. So if you're looking for Drunk Space Nine, go to drunkspace9.com for all the latest information about that. And while we're at it, I'm joined very fondly after like a holiday break by Trek on the Tube. Hello, Sean.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
How do you say welcome back in French?
Sois le bienvenu.
Ah. What Sean said to the audience. Welcome back, audience. By the way, I'm learning French so I can understand your French Star Trek podcast.
Oh, wow. It's not my French podcast.
I know. The one you're on. The other one that you're on. Sorry. Could you please properly promote? Could you please properly...
There are two people there are two kind of French communities that I'm associated with. One is a French community from France, and the other one is a French-speaking community from Quebec. And so they both do their own thing. They both have their own podcast. I think they're hosted on the same site, just because I think it makes things easier to like have everyone regrouped. But yeah, I try to participate as much as I can with what they do. But they have a lot of people to organize, and so it's always hard to get the dates that suits everyone. They always have these special calendars that you have to check the boxes like what dates you want to be on.
Do they have a better?
And they go with, well, they have a better system than you, because your system is like we're recording now. Please come on. They have the system where you check the boxes for the dates that you want to be on the show, like a month in advance, let's say, and then they'll pick the date where the most people are there.
Yeah.
So so they can get maybe 4 or 5 people on.
It's very democratic. I like that.
It is. It is.
How long do you think it should take me to become conversational enough in French to be like on the podcast?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
What should I set as my goal? Like in a year, should I be conversational? Like should we have practice sessions? Is that possible?
Because I know that people, when they live in a country, they learn the language, but they'll tell you that under a year they start speaking the language, but then they're like immersed in the country and the culture.
I already know.
So you need to start watching French movies and French TV shows. That's what you need to start doing. Listening to French songs.
I'll tell you this, and you didn't know this about Starfleet Boy, but now you and the audience will know this. My second obsession in terms of cultures is I'm a Francophile. I'm an Anglophile first, and then I'm a Francophile. Sorry, people of origin.
So Patrick Stewart, Jean-Luc Picard as a character is like.
Why do you think I love him? Why do you think I love him? I walked through France on Le Chemin Saint-Jacques in 2010, and I learned how to say something really well so that people would talk to me in English, which was bonjour, pardon, est-ce qu'il y a une personne qui parle anglais? And then people would always say, but your French is so nice. And I would say, I only know this.
Which is a very touristy thing to do. I mean, a lot of people would do that, wouldn't they?
But I tricked the French into speaking English, which they do very well. They speak English superbly, by the way.
Really? They do it reluctantly.
Yes. Because I think a lot of people, the French accent is very famous, and so I believe people are self-conscious about how do I sound.
Yeah, I can attest to that. My wife's accent isn't horrible. It's not as disastrous as many French accents are, but she's very self-conscious about it. She doesn't enjoy her own accent.
No, so
my accent makes no sense whatsoever. So I mean, come on.
Well, you have I still hear the New Zealand. If I'm not an expert on accents.
Really? Well, okay, I've been watching iZombie recently.
The Kiwi.
I've been trying to catch up my iZombie episodes, and so the Maine, she's from New Zealand in there, and so she's American in the show, so she talks with an American accent. But just in the last episode that I watched, she did a New Zealand accent, and I was like, I don't sound like that at all. Right? My family sounds like that. I Skyped my cousin the other day. She just like made fun of me. She was looking at a girlfriend making fun of me because like my accent isn't right. Anyway,
get it right. Get it right.
Get it right.
Watch Flight of the Conchords.
Watch Flight of the Conchords. Watch Flight of. That's what I need to do. I need to listen to some more Shiny. Shiny.
Canadian Brits. I can't do it. So after that,
because my cousin's name is Brit.
Brit. Is it Brit? Brit?
It's Brit.
I don't think there's one New Zealand accent. I think it's just like England. There's regional ones, and you probably have a different...
New Zealand is a bit of a melting pot. So I mean, there's a lot of different cultures that have kind of culminated into becoming, what is New Zealand. And so I think there's a lot of different accents that are kind of mixing together there. Because
speaking of a melting pot,
Taika Waititi has a very different accent to, for example, Flight of the Conchords. Speaking
of a melting pot, Sean, this episode reveals just what a melting pot the United Federation of Planets is in that epic scene where Counselor Troy talks to Samuel Clemens about the Federation, and
she's all like, "You don't understand,
young lady.
You don't
come
get
from a time when men achieve power and wealth by standing on the backs of the poor, where prejudice and intolerance are commonplace, and power is an end unto itself. And you're telling me that isn't how it is anymore?"
Starfleet Twain is not bad at all.
That's worth giving up cigars for. Do you want to do the episode summary, or shall I?
Oh my god, I love how he has these random moments in his voice. He's kind of like what's his name, the other guy. Every time he speaks kind of like this, right?
It's a common. It's a great thing that we talked about accents in the beginning of this episode, because I'm totally intrigued by all the crazy accents in San Francisco. But Mark Twain's particular way of speaking was apparently a way that Americans actually spoke.
That's insane, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was unique among the way people spoke. I think he had like his own thing going on.
Eccentric. I mean, if the representations that I've seen of him on screen are accurate, or at least somewhat accurate, then he seemed like kind of an eccentric dude.
Right, it's true. And in case you didn't, Christopher Walken.
Oswald, you could be mayor of the city if they voted for you, but you gotta say something nice, right?
I like raspier older. You need to put a little more rasp. You got to get a little
raspier. He started becoming like the weird, shop guy in all of the movies. He would always sell the weird things. He brings the crazy remote to Adam Sandler and Click, and he's the one that transforms Kevin Spacey into a cat in the worst movie in all of humanity, 9 Lives.
I think Star Trek Discovery should cast Christopher Walken
as an Andorian, right?
He should play a human admiral. I
disagree. He should be like an argumentative tell. But
all right, so today we're talking about, in case you haven't caught on yet, audience, we're talking about Time's Arrow Part 2. Sean, I asked you already, and I don't remember your answer. Are you doing the summary today?
I can do it. All right, I can do
it. Okay, awesome.
Last time on Star Trek: The Next Generation.
I know. I love the recap. Sorry, go.
You love the recaps.
That was so good. It was such a. It said all the right. Like, it reminded you that Captain Picard.
The conclusion.
It reminded you that Captain Picard did not want to go save Data. That his first priority in the last episode was not to Data, and Riker was all crazy.
Crazy right.
He's like, I
Crazy
can't.
right.
And then so that's why it's like so good. After I hadn't seen it in a while, to remember when Worf is so heartless and he's like, "Sir, we should just destroy this thing," which, by the way, would have killed everybody. Just FYI, Worf.
Calm down, Worf.
So, anyways, yes, I do like those recaps. They
he does calm down because eventually they give him the Defiant, and he doesn't blow everything up. I mean, he blows most things up because there's a war, but not everything.
Worf gets his day. It's true.
He also looks bitter in red.
Yes, he does look way better in red. It's true. Captain Worf.
Captain Worf, the CW. Episode summary. All right, so this episode picks up God knows how long after the first one. Is it a few weeks, maybe?
I think it's like days, but yeah.
Days? Okay, let's say a week. Because the rent is due.
Oh, that's right. It could be a month.
It could be a month. It's probably weekly, isn't it? It'll be like anyway.
You know what day it is today, Mr. Pickard.
Mr. Pickard.
Mr. Pickard. Do you know what the fucking time is even? I don't see a watch on your wrist. Yeah, stupid person.
How would that man be reading out of a book when he can't blimmin' see? Mr. Pickard.
I want me goddamn money, Mr. Pickard.
I want me goddamn money, or I'll have a bit of that one over there. That Riker fella. God. Anyway, okay. So the episode picks up, let's say, about a week after the events of the first episode. Mark Twain's talking about, or Samuel Clemens is talking about the events that have transpired. Data is still trying to whip up a motorized engine, right? No, he's still trying to whip up his techno, whatever it is.
His techno thing, yeah. His modulator.
Yeah,
it's the modulator that opens like the time vortex thing.
It is. But it's also got like a seismograph thing on it because he can like detect what, I don't know, tachyon surges, whatever they are.
Right. It's driving Jack London crazy.
and then the rest of the crew, I
don't normally let folks in the hotel, Mr. Clements. I hope you don't mind not telling anybody. Sorry.
You can't do that shit. Anyway, so the rest of the crew that have been stranded in this time period, I think they're aware that Data's there. Well, they're aware that Data's there. They haven't found Data yet. They're off doing their own shenanigans, trying to figure out why so many people are dying from cholera. You know,
right.
shouldn't be killing so many people, and so they find out that two individuals, a couple of sorts, or two doctors,
who we see at the beginning of the episode, and they look like aliens. Like, it's kind of awesome because you're like, oh my god, those two look scary, even though they're inhuman.
Well, it turns out they are full on scary because they're the ones that are grabbing the humans and bringing them to their own planet and eating.
Basically, they suck the energy. They're like Dementors.
They feed off their life force.
They're space Dementors.
Oh, they're space Dementors.
Space Dementors. Wow. They totally take. They suck
even got Nagini, right?
Yeah, dude. Oh my god, we just found the source of Harry Potter. This is the subconscious source of Harry Potter.
Well, I mean, okay, Harry Potter doesn't get beheaded.
No. and until
okay,
fine, but that is awesome too, that Data's head is 500 years older than his body.
Yeah,
kind of cool.
It's kind of weird. Okay, anyway. So they figure out that these two individuals are doing these terrible things. They're the ones that are taking it, and they manage to they managed to intervene and stop them from stealing one of these people, right? Oh god, he's pulling out his crystal again. Oh my god. The episode's fuzzy.
What's that?
What happens next? The episode's fuzzy to me. What happens next?
When was the last time?
I know what happens. I know what happens.
All right.
There's Mr. the policeman comes in, right? And he's all like, what are you folks doing? Because like everyone's weird. There's like Picard's trying to pretend like he's changing the light bulbs or something.
That's right, yeah.
All right. And then Geordie's all, wearing his sci-fi shit. So he's
it's a great moment because they're pretending to be an acting troupe later on, and they're all having to like act, which is kind of fun.
And then they'll have to act in these various characters that they have. Anyway, Mr. the policeman isn't happy with all this. Riker tries to pull like a policeman move, but he's not convincing. So then they run away like a bunch of terrorists from the hospital.
They're future terrorists, as far as Samuel Clemens is concerned. He's like, I know there's people here from the future, and they are trying to confound us. And let me give you a warning:
it's an invasion.
I will not stand it. You will not succeed with your foul intentions, Mr. Data. I promise you that.
It's a good thing that their intentions were foul, and that trigger happy Riker shot the alien, right? Because it activated Data's whatchamagig. And so Data came running. Well, he came rolling on his carriage.
And then everyone just
hops in.
Yeah.
Everyone hops in, and he's like, "No time for hello. We'll explain it later on." And then
we find out how Guinan meets Picard. That was important too, which is epic. Actually, we had to talk about. I have a whole notes.
Anyway, they roll up to the hotel room. The rent is due again, or still. I'm supposing that sometime off screen, everything was explained to Data because he's all down with the gig. He reads out of the play like everyone else, right?
No, I think that I think maybe I saw a different episode. They hadn't found each other till that moment when Data's head gets chopped off. And then, or did I remember?
That's after though, isn't it?
Oh no. Both of us
are
failing at the at the order because time travel is so freaking weird. Okay. God. It's because this episode makes you think too hard.
It's a great episode. I love it.
It is a great episode. But anyways, at some point, I don't remember.
Rare times when TNG executes a part 2 correctly.
Yeah, I think this is better than the first part, and I probably gave the first part a 10. So I have to now.
Usually TNG has these epic first parts. They leave you with this like amazing cliffhanger, and then the second part's it's kind of underwhelming, right? That's how I feel about Best of Both Worlds.
Interesting.
And then that's how I feel about a lot of things. I prefer.
But you're right. Part 2 was very thrilling and exciting, and the payoff is great. But anyways,
what's the one with Spock? Unification.
Unification. Oh, I love Unification part 2. But part 1 is better than part 2.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
And so this one is different though because part 2 is better than part 1. But I couldn't, for the life of me, apparently finish this episode recap. Right?
No, you're gonna finish it right now. Oh, because Humber's here. Yes. The doctor has arrived.
Oh my god, that was so loud.
It's the Dalek. That's why Daleks, they can hurt you with their voice. It just happens.
Oh my god.
They're the ones that go exterminate. Exterminate.
Yes, that's them. That's them. Wow. Happy New Year to everyone.
Happy New Year, Doctor.
We forgot. We forgot it was the New Year. Happy New Year.
Doctor, you didn't miss much. We were just on our episode, so.
Wow. Well, you started at 3?
Yeah.
Wow.
You just arrived in time to rein it in.
All right.
John and I took a break from the summary to say actually how much we liked this episode in terms of against the first one. We liked it better than part 1. And Sean was observing that most of the time part 1s are better than the part 2s. So he was pleased. We were all pleased about that. I don't remember what you think about this from memory, so I'm curious.
Are you capable of doing an episode, like a part 2, an episode recap in, let's say, 2 minutes? Are you capable?
Me?
Of
yes.
that? No, not you.
I'm able to.
You're incapable of doing anything like that.
I can do an episode recap in 2 minutes. Yes.
All right, let's hear it.
Let's hear it. Right?
For this one, okay.
Let's get this done professionally.
All right. So, oh my gosh, you're testing me here. Okay, so the episode, the crew, the bridge crew of the Enterprise, they journey into the past, and eventually they catch up with. They're trying to find the what are the names of the aliens?
The Ophidians, and they're also trying to find Data.
And they're trying to find Data. Well, no, are they really trying to find Data?
This is where we got stuck on the last. This is the exact point where
I think Data's dead, right? No. So anyway, they journey into the past, and they're really trying to find out what destroyed Data. They're not expecting to find Data.
Fine, that's true.
And they eventually do find Data. But the crew they somehow manage to find all these clothes just very easily, and they find a very they find a place to stay with, despite the fact that they have no money, and
their experts. Dixon Hill prepared them for this.
There's no excuse.
This is Dixon Hill. Everything in Dixon Hill prepared them for traveling into the past.
No.
Yes,
there's no excuse for them finding all this with no money. And the episode really, they very quickly find evidence of these the aliens
foul
in this
play
hospital
from the future visitors who I will not tolerate.
Right, in this hospital, and they engage the aliens in some way, I think.
When did you last see? I just saw this episode today.
Oh no, I saw it like a month ago.
I'm the freshest mind on this episode, and you guys are not doing well.
And then Data, meanwhile, Data and Guinan are arguing over Mark Twain, how annoying he is.
He is very annoying, but he's entertaining as all hell too.
And eventually,
Mark Twain ends up in the fucking future, and Counselor Troy shows him around the Enterprise.
So Data has this device that is monitoring the radiation, temporal radiation from these aliens, and he finds a spike. So he goes to investigate, and that's where he encounters the crew, the rest of the bridge crew, and they all jump on this wagon or something, and they all cart off, and
you were not ready. You were not ready for a 2-minute summary, Doctor. I'm sorry.
2 minutes are not over.
Okay, go on.
I mean, you've interrupted me 3 times.
To be fair, you're absolutely correct. I will stay quiet.
And I saw this like a month ago, so
you got the gist of it, though.
I got the gist of it.
If you guys don't mind, since I just saw the episode, if I may chime in with what I thought might have been happening on screen.
I
know I'm hijacking the summary, even though I gave it to you guys.
Well, the episode's almost over. Once Data and the crew get together, they're like, okay, we have to dispatch these aliens, and they go back to the cave, and Mark Twain follows them, and Mark Twain goes in the future, Picard stays in the past, and Riker's like, Guinan, what am I supposed to do? And Guinan's like, I don't want to say because I don't want to mess up the timelines. And somehow, I don't know, Picard slips like a piece of copper that apparently wasn't there before. I don't under that. It just makes no sense to me. But there's a piece of copper that Geordi like, oh, a piece of copper. If I take this out, Data's head works. And you know, Mark Twain goes back to the past, and Picard goes back to the
future.
and nobody cares about these aliens after this, and I don't care for this episode at all.
Oh wow!
There, that's the summary.
Actually, your summary ended up being amazing.
It was very good.
It was very good. It did get to the point.
But can someone just explain to me the whole thing with the little piece of copper in Data's head? Are you going to tell me that all the way... Okay, in the first episode, they didn't run a full diagnostics on that freaking head?
Well, they didn't have
Nobody
the body
thought...
They didn't have the body part. Even though we've seen the head...
Data's head functions without the body.
But
they could have... I don't understand why nobody thought to just activate Data and ask him, hey... How the hell did you lose your body? I mean, obviously the head functions.
Or Data could have swapped his head because he still had his regular head.
They could have done so many other things. They made it in the first episode. They made it like sound like, oh, this head is never gonna work because that's it. It's gone. You know, kaput. And yet Geordi just takes out this little thing, this little piece of paper, and oh, everything works.
It was an iron.
Okay, maybe it was too obvious. That's the thing. He ran every scan that he's ever ran, right? But he never would have thought that there was like a piece of metal stuck in there. It was just too obvious.
It was too obvious.
I call bullshit on that. 100%, 101%. They actually have Data's actual functioning head next to the non-functioning head. I'm sure there's a way that you could have asked the computer, compare both heads. Is there any difference?
The problem is, the problem is solved because if you remember, his panties were caught in a twist because he really wanted to get to the bottom of the mystery. Remember, Picard wanted to keep him. That could have been a plot point if Data never left the Enterprise. But if you recall in the first episode, Sarah, Picard even tries to keep him on the Enterprise in his wisdom, knowing that this is the only way to break the paradox is to like not let the obvious happen. But Data insists, and then we find out that his own modulators were the only thing that could open the rift or whatever. And so they use his modulators to see what's going on in this like phase shifted reality, and that's when he gets into trouble, and voila, he disappears. And so you negate that, sir, in your assessment of Mr. Lafarge's resources.
Geordi has that freaking thing, that visor. He couldn't have seen the piece of paper.
He did. When he finally looked with his visor, that's when
he hadn't bothered to look until the whole adventure was over.
Yes.
Okay, that's I call bullshit. Okay.
He had his eyes closed in episode 1.
He had his eyes closed. He had his eyes. Oh my god.
He's only a goddamn human. He's only a human. God damn it. Like, give the guy a break. Geordi's not perfect. I know he's a miracle.
Well, until now, that discrepancy had never annoyed me because I had never noticed. I had never thought of it.
Now, the only thing I can imagine is that the piece of paper actually wasn't there before. That somehow temporally...
Oh, God. So this is like a Looper situation.
Right, because it's only until Picard...
In Looper, you have all of your limbs until they cut one of your limbs off in the past, and then you're going to lose it in the moment.
Precisely. That's the only thing I can think of, because Guinan is not giving Riker any clues as to what to do, because she knows Picard has to be there for a while to figure it out. I mean, it all depends on how we perceive time.
One could argue that time is
cause and effect.
Yeah, really. Exactly. I like that you explained the best explanation for your own problem.
No, it's still a problem to me, because that's not the way
what it's all about.
No, because that's not the way time functions in other Star Trek episodes. I think it was.
Yeah, I agree. Time doesn't function like that in the rest of Star Trek. Time isn't as I don't know, shaky.
I mean, it's all experimental stuff. That's, I mean, the inherent problem with time travel episodes is that they have to kind of go on the current knowledge of the time of how temporal mechanics works, and B, like a way to present it that doesn't boggle the mind. And I'm always, I kind of enjoy the mind-boggling aspects of time travel. So, but I admit that Trek is not an expert. It's not like when you watch Doctor Who, there's some like payoffs to these like really intricate like time travel conundrums or paradoxes or whatever. And Star Trek doesn't do it on a regular basis. And I think it actually shouldn't be Star Trek's like go-to for.
I agree.
For
I think Star
like,
Trek should never use time travel ever again.
Or so rarely. It should just, there should be like a moratorium on it for like 10 years or something like that. So I agree completely with
that being said, this is one of the time travel stories that I enjoy the most.
It is. To me, it works as well.
I couldn't get past the thing I just said. I couldn't get past the fact in the first episode, they devoted a lot of time in the script to the challenges Data had arriving in the past. You had to find a way to get clothing. You had to find a way to get money in order to obtain a place to stay. Those are the challenges that one looks forward to when you see one of these time travel episodes. It harkens back to City on the Edge of Forever, where Kirk and Spock had the same challenges. How the hell do we hide Spock's ears?
He's building the same machine, right?
And he's building the same machine, essentially. That's a good call on that. It looks the same, and so for part 2 to come along, and the bridge crew they're already wearing period costumes. The Troy and Crusher already have their hairs done. I mean,
but they skip ahead. You understand that they skip ahead like a few weeks, so like even
I would have
just
liked
1
to
week.
have seen that. I would like to have seen.
But you already seen it with Data, though. Do you need to see it again?
Well,
I think it's more of a challenge.
The trade-off we get, Doctor. For me, what I focused on, I think you're absolutely right with your points, but the trade-off we get is that beautiful Guinan Picard moment when Guinan meets Picard for the very first time, and Picard already knows her and knows her well. It's like up until now that has been Guinan's relationship with Picard, and today and in this episode it flips the other way, which is amazing. And I thought it was well done, acted beautifully by Stewart. That scene when they open the door and there he is and she sees him and he's like, "Do you know me?" And she's like, "Should I?" And she goes, "Do I know you?" And he goes, "Very well, not yet, but you will." And it's just this like, there's this butter in his voice and like this like I don't know, I felt it.
It didn't do a thing for me.
Wow.
It didn't do a thing for me. I still don't understand. The episode actually sours me slightly on the Guinan Picard relationship, because it's by this point I feel like we should have an explanation as to what the hell is their relationship.
It's what you saw today. It's a whole
they spent some time in a cave.
No, it's that Picard met Guinan.
That's what makes them more than friends, more than family.
And she had to hold the secret for 500 freaking years before he was born. Like, which is kind of interesting in and of itself. Is that
I'm sure they met again before the Enterprise, though.
Yes, exactly.
Right. There is an untold story of Picard now meeting Guinan for the first time, right? We know how Guinan meets Picard now. We understand that. We don't know the story of how Picard met Guinan. That's as far as I know, unless the Doctor's vast knowledge of the expanded universe. We don't have the on screen.
There's surely a million books that explain this.
It's possible. I don't know. I haven't read them all.
I haven't read one.
I didn't find. I didn't. There was no butter.
And also think of it this way: like when Picard, for me, what was
when I was having breakfast.
What was profound, also
watching this episode.
Maybe it's me becoming an old man here, old man Sohail, Starfleet boy. But for me, what was epically profound about that moment too was that like things I didn't think about before were like, this is a Guinan before the Borg destroy her homeworld. She talks about in this episode, or in the previous one, she talks to Data about like, don't tell my father. We know that Guinan has since lost her homeworld and her father, and we know a little bit about her story from Star Trek Generations, where we see her as a refugee from something, possibly the Borg attack. So it kind of dates the events a little bit and shows you that like, oh yeah, like this is when she was trying to get to the Nexus. So I think Guinan is actually quite a wonderful there's like more payoff now to this moment because of all the things.
Where's her home planet?
We don't know. I don't know. I don't think it's ever been, at least as far as like what I know from on screen, because I'm pretty good on the on screen stuff. I don't have any idea. But the Elorians come up again in DS9. There are others, as we know. There's Soren, and then there's that crazy one who was Prince Humperdinck in Princess Bride.
That episode. That's the episode with the balls, right?
Right.
God.
So I saw all that watching it this time. I'm not saying that was present, when I first saw it. I don't think I cared as much about this episode, but to me, those kind of moments, and then just the acting, like at the end when Picard, I'm making all my impassioned pleas here, Doctor. At the end,
I like the aliens. That's the thing. I
thought the aliens were very good. Yes, and
I like the concept that they live out of phase. And I like the concept that they've somehow found this way to gather, like, I don't know, the life force of some other being, and they suck that, and that's how they live. I find that fascinating, right?
I also find it fascinating that our only choice is to completely, utterly destroy them. It's like,
well, there was plenty of room, considering this is a two-parter. I was expecting this to be a setup for more with this alien race. I mean, they devoted a whole two-parter to this, and we never see these people again. I think this race is more interesting than what we saw in Enterprise and that whole temporal
Syllaban.
The Syllaban. These are way more interesting.
Yeah, the Syllaban is just the worst thing ever.
We have schisms coming up this season, which I think that's pretty freaky stuff too, and it's kind of on the same vein of like beings existing outside of our immediately present, our viewable universe. They're just like right next door to our universe, but they can interact with our universe. It's kind of
it's very creepy, and I think there was plenty of territory to explore here, and instead they just kind of threw the episode away, and they made it into this let's just throw everybody into costume and run around, early America with Mark Twain in tow. And it just didn't... I would have preferred a story where it was much more about the aliens, and, maybe we didn't need to have the whole bridge crew go back in time. Maybe we could have just maybe it could have just been a Data episode.
Well, they left Worf in command of the Enterprise.
Okay, but my point is that they kind of went for the silly, and I actually think this episode would have worked better if it had just been Data somehow, Data and Guinan, let's say, and maybe if they threw Picard in at the end somehow, I don't know. But to me, it was just superfluous to have, Troy, and then that whole scene where
you weren't happy with Mrs. Carmichael.
I hated Mrs. Carmichael.
Mr. Pickett.
Oh, that was just, and then they're rehearsing Midsummer Night's Dream, and
that's great. All the stuff you're citing is you hate. I hated it. And then the thing, and just to complete my hatred for this is the scene that really got under my skin and just made me just foam at the mouth, literally, was the part where they bring Mark Twain on the Enterprise. Mark Twain is one of the greatest writers of the 19th century, and he had very, very harsh and legitimate criticisms about humanity coming to grips with the Industrial Revolution, which was a thing that was happening in the moment, and to take him and to and he starts
talking about stuff on the Enterprise, and then you have Troy. He's like, "Oh no, Mr. Twain, we've solved all that. You don't have to worry about all that." And I'm just like, and that Roddenberry utopian bullshit, and just throwing it at Mark Twain. And I'm like, don't insult Mark. Everything Mark Twain says is still relevant today. And I'm sorry, but I love Star Trek.
It's relevant today, but should it be?
We're nowhere near that utopian crap, and I just it just bothered me that they just kind of like, oh, Mark, silly rabbit tricks are for kids scene, where it's just like, oh, Mark Twain, you don't know what you're talking about.
Wow, I read that totally. I read that totally different than you did. And also I just have to say that like, Kalmate Doctor, because first of all, Star Trek is set in the future. And so it's supposed to be like better than today. Like and that's what I thought. That's what I read. That's what I read.
They don't have to insult Mark Twain. They don't have to see it as an
insult.
I thought it was an insult. I totally read it as an insult. I know they didn't mean it that way. I know that they didn't mean it that way. I legitimately think they thought it was clever. But
I think it was.
I don't think they thought they were clever. I think they were trying to kind of reinforce the idea that Star Trek is about, becoming better. It's an optimist show, and it's about how humanity will eventually reach, this good that we see in TNG. It'll eventually overcome all the problems that Mark Twain talks about, and I think it's kind of a way of paying off everything that he would complain about. It's like, hey, look, we managed to fix all this, but I don't think they said it in a way that was like disrespectful or anything.
Yeah, I'll agree.
I don't have like extensive knowledge about the guy, know about what he said. So maybe
I'll agree that maybe,
I didn't feel
the interaction was too simplistic, perhaps. But I mean, it's a show geared at like a wide audience. Like you can't go too crazy with the philosophy, although I would love it. I would have loved it as a kid. I'm not saying that you can't. It's just that for a wider audience, you kind of got to keep it simplistic. And the statement he makes, I wrote it down in my notes because he says, "Young lady, I come from a time when men achieve power and wealth by standing on the backs of the poor, where prejudice and intolerance are commonplace and is an end unto itself. And you're telling me that isn't how it is anymore." He actually like acknowledges, he's like, you're kind of acting like rude here. You're telling, like he kind of acknowledges exactly the anger that you that you profess here, Doctor, because even Mark Twain's like, hey, listen, I'm being serious here. And she says, no, with genuine, she says, no, that's not a problem anymore. We have other problems. It's true. Like that's where the conversation should have gone. Like, racism still exists because like we hate, Klingons and Romulans.
The Romulans way too much.
Like
okay, it is interesting to note that those kind of problems no longer exist within the Federation.
Within the Federation too is what she's also saying. Yeah,
and the Federation also turns a blind eye to a lot of other species and races, and to their problems.
So, but that's not his fault that Troy is so indoctrinated. I mean, like I think it is actually kind of like a message. Like
the Federation
kind of like,
is fucking actually scary.
Yeah, but it's a good scene. It's actually a good scene, and she
Mind
responds.
Control, man.
One thing that I liked that she said to kind of counter him was
technically the Federation owns all the news, right?
You guys,
there's something sinister at work. Mark Twain would not have been happy with the Federation.
He wasn't. Remember, he even says, "I know you guys say you're explorers, but surely you have weapons of mass destruction." And he's right. Actually, they do.
He's right.
Like,
they do.
He's actually correct. They do, but I think
Sarek ain't afraid of blowing up no fucking Kronos, right?
There we go. Damn straight.
You don't know that. You don't watch Star Trek Discovery, or have you seen it? How do you know that? Damn straight.
I read Wikipedia.
Oh man. Maybe it is the best way to distill the episodes or the show. So I'm glad you're following along. But
you read the memory alpha pages as they pop up.
Yeah,
as they pop up, it's
just like Doctor Who, man.
Speaking of which, I
No,
actually
no. No. Don't get me off. I'm still on Mark Twain, man. I'm still on Mark Twain. Okay, granted that I'm
he's hopping on
complaining too much.
the Doctor Who horseless carriage right now.
But I just I don't know. I would have been happier with the episode if they hadn't taken Mark Twain on the Enterprise and just slapped him with the utopian stuff. I mean, if they had taken some other character who wasn't Mark Twain, I think I would have handled that scene a little better. But
Okay.
I just it just seemed to get on. I don't know. I've read Twain. I've read a lot of Twain, so that's why I imagine Twain being there and looking around and being, guys, this is bullshit, man.
Look at the end. Yeah. Okay, look at the end.
Nothing concerning Mark Twain bothers me in the episode, but I will say this: I do disagree with using famous people in time travel episodes. Like, just generally speaking, this isn't Star Trek. This is just generally speaking. Right. I disagree with, like, you go back in time and then, of course they have to meet friggin', Abraham Lincoln or whatever. Right. Why do you got to do it? Like, why you got to do that?
Right.
I disagree with that. Mm-hmm. And so I disagree with the fact that they use Mark Twain.
I think it depends on the actor, because if Daniel Day-Lewis was going to reprise his role as Lincoln on Star Trek, I'm all aboard it. I'm like, let's go. How are we going to meet Lincoln? I mean, come on, it's Daniel Day-Lewis. I think it all depends on a bunch of factors. I will say, though, that I agree that, like, if I weren't so sentimentally attached to the idea. So first of all, at the end, Picard, when he finally meets Mark Twain in that moment when he runs across town, poor Mark Twain, like old man Twain, running across town to give Picard the Ophidian and the instructions from the Enterprise crew, right? And it is convenient that only one person could go back through the portal, so it had
the aliens are called the Davidians, by the way.
Right, the Davidians. It's like the branch Davidians, which
that's right.
Yeah. So, anyways, but it's weird. But
I didn't pick up on that.
But anyways, Mark Twain gives him this thing. Picard looks at him with such reverence that I have to say Patrick Stewart in that moment makes me believe that that's Mark Twain. He makes me believe that, like, Picard actually met Mark Twain.
Guest starring Mark Twain.
Like, yeah, and it's like not even an actor. It's Mark. They pulled Mark Twain out of history and put him in the episode. Come on, what's the actor's name who plays Teddy Roosevelt in?
You're talking about
in The Wind and the Lion. Brian Keith. If Brian Keith were gonna play Teddy Roosevelt on Star Trek, tell me you wouldn't watch it.
All right. Played the part twice, by the way. Twice.
I didn't realize that. Oh, wow.
He played it in a miniseries. An older Teddy Roosevelt. But on the point about having real historical figures in these episodes, I completely agree. And we haven't even talked about Jack London, which I thought that was just like adding. I'm like, oh, come on now, really?
That was amazing.
He's a nice character, right?
You got Mr. Clements, I'm please don't tell anyone.
Okay, up until he's revealed, that's
But how awful! He betrays Data. He betrays Data and lets Samuel Clements into the room.
So corny. So Samuel Clements met Jack London on Star Trek. I mean, come on, guys. I mean,
I know. So the Doctor is actually studied in history, so I do recall even at the time you had these objections because history is and always has been your chief. And
then the ease that they get into the Presidio, the cave at the. I'm like, isn't that a military base?
It kind of all just happens at once, also, doesn't it? Because they like the lights flash and the portal opens and everyone jumps through. Mark Twain has this very energetic jump, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Like,
my favorite thing is when he arrives on the Enterprise and he completely is just like, oh well, let's go explore this. Worf's face when he walks out with Counselor Troy, when he literally just turns to the camera and he's like,
that's my expression.
But then Mark Twain doesn't pick up on Worf, does he?
He does. Remember he had the whole visceral reaction to him, sort of like, oh, he's trying not to be rude. His gentleman upbringing gives him.
Okay, so I have a question about a very specific scene. All right, when they're in the hospital trying to figure out why everyone's dying of cholera,
Mm-hmm.
and then so Mr. the policeman officer man comes in. And so he's all telling them that they shouldn't be here, like they're all suspects and what have you. He grabs the cane from Geordie and says, "You shouldn't have this. This is a gentleman's cane." Is he saying that because Geordie's black, or is he saying that?
No, yeah, I think
Geordie's wearing like. Well, this is watching it.
Yeah,
recently, that's what I thought. But as a child, I never thought of his skin color. I always thought that maybe he was wearing like crappy clothes, and that the cane was too like. It looked too expensive to be in his position.
I would say it's safe to say that was a commentary on the prejudices of the day. I don't think that, like, even though there are
because you can't rip an iPhone from someone wearing crappy clothes nowadays and say he's probably stolen.
there were gentleman's phone.
There were Africans and people of African descent at the time who traveled freely. They were freemen, and particularly I think English. If I'm not mistaken, Humbert, you're the better historian here, but I think the English particularly could so like there was a tolerance towards, I mean, it wasn't like they assumed that this was like an escaped slave or anything like that, but there was still an intolerance, bigotry towards people of darker skin colors who didn't look like everyone else.
So you think the cane was a race thing?
100%. I think.
Comment.
I don't know. So. I'm not sure, because then on the flip side, you have Guinan, who's obviously an African-American woman running around in
she's very well respected.
She's very well respected. Person. She's running around in upper-class circles. I think the show goes out of its way to kind of avoid race.
Yeah. Maybe it should have been.
All. So maybe I think it might be socioeconomic, I think.
So yeah, it's more like your clothes look too cheap for you to be having this cane.
Interesting.
You probably stole it.
Right.
But
and
what was it like?
Granted, they probably were. I mean, they must have been stolen to begin with, the clothes. I mean, Geordie. So I mean, right. So he's right. The cop is his instincts are right.
Well, he gets
stolen.
He gets a Riker hit though, doesn't he?
That was the highlight of the whole episode.
I don't. That's a really good question.
Well, Riker is often the highlight of every episode.
Just a little, yeah. No,
that's a really good question. I think the show could have actually addressed it a little better. I don't think it's clear.
I think they went out of their way to not even talk about race. I mean, because even with Mark Twain, he hardly, mentioned anything about race or whatever. So.
Well, one would expect.
Oh, they drop odd comments about Data, but then that's the joke, isn't it? Like, where are you from? I'm from Europe. He's a Frenchman. La di da.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
But then that's all there is. That's just in regards to the fact that he's very pale, right?
But that goes back to Dixon Hill. That goes back to the holodeck episode.
My impression is that
I don't like the Dixon Hill episodes.
My impression from history is that it would be more likely a racist remark than a socioeconomic remark, or both. It could have been both, period.
Okay.
I don't think the screenwriter was doing that much thinking to begin with.
Here we go. Here we go.
I just think they were really going for a very fun, sort of turn your brain off kind of romp. It was supposed to be light, and which, granted, I mean, it works generally, because I mean, the two of you like it. I am just not in the mood to. I didn't find it fun, but I'm in the minority. I admit.
Do these two episodes, are they written? Because they usually write these episodes like on the go, right?
Right.
Back in TNG, they were doing this weekly.
Writers. Yeah, two different writers sometimes. Yeah.
Would they write these two parters at the same time, or would they do like, we're doing a part one, and then they all go on break for however many
part
weeks,
one,
and then when they come back, they write part two?
Yes, right, exactly.
So when they come back, even if it's the same writers, they're in a different mindset. They have they just spent like Christmas with the families and whatnot, and they're all happy.
Correct.
And so, do you think they have this epic tale that they want to tell? They go on holidays, they open the prisons, they come home, they come back to work, they're all happy, and so they make this a comedy.
I think. Well, I don't know about the case with this particular episode, but I know with the previous two parters, including the Borg, it is two different writers. So there's not even this, like, you can't even have the grand epic, because really what it is the first writer, his or her job is just get the best cliffhanger you can get, and then the writer coming after has to somehow climb out of that.
No, this is a Star Wars episode 7 and 8 situation.
Correct.
I think this is one of those times where we need to go to the space database, Memory Alpha, and I'd like to read from the story and script notes, because I think they're relevant to some of the thoughts that we're expressing here, and it might give us some more insight. In the original script, Guinan claimed to be from a well-known Boston family and that she was a close relative of Judge Truman Williams. Clemens checked her story and received a telegram from Williams, who had never heard of Guinan. So that was in the original script. Ronald Moore regretted that more wasn't done with the 1890s period. An idea dropped due to time and budget would have had the crew staying for several months. They would meet a cafe run by Picard, where the running joke was how bad his food was, etc. And that's from The Companion.
Wow.
In this episode,
I can feel your soul disintegrating right now.
Wow.
In this episode,
it could have been worse.
In this episode, Samuel Clemens, it could have been, aka Mark Twain, mentions that he wrote a book about time travel. He's referring to, of course, Connecticut Yankee King Arthur's Court, which was published in 1889, 4 years before the episode's time setting. This book inspired the 1998 movie A Night in Camelot, starring Whoopi Goldberg. This book is also referenced in Voyager's Spirit Folk, in which Catherine Janeway gives a copy of said book to the holodeck character of Michael Sullivan. Towards the end of the episode, Captain Picard mentioned Samuel Clemens will write the books he was to have written after our encounter. Indeed, Clemens wrote 7 books after 1893. The last one, The Mysterious Stranger, was published posthumously. Have you read The Mysterious Stranger, Doctor?
I haven't actually.
Interesting. Clemens recommends that Jack go and see Alaska, the Klondike, the Aurora Borealis. However, gold was not struck in the Klondike until 1896. In 1893, the region was not commonly known.
But is it the same screenwriter for both episodes?
It's let's see who gets the credit here. Jerry Taylor, I don't know about, and story by Joe Manofsky, so we like them. And I think
that's part 2.
Yeah, and part 1, here we go. Let me see. I have to go backwards here. Was a story by Joe Manofsky and teleplay by Joe Manofsky and Michael Piller.
Okay, so it's the same thing as Best of Both Worlds. Piller, I believe, wrote part 1.
So both stories are by the same person, but then the teleplay was done by 2 different people.
Correct.
So the story is the same person.
But the story can be very...
I mean, how different is the story from the teleplay?
Right. Well, it explains the tone shift. I mean, you were saying it was too lighthearted for you. Perhaps Jerry Taylor took a different approach than Michael Piller would have.
Okay, wait a minute. So just like to be clear, does the teleplay change the story a lot? Or is it just kind of like the on-screen interpretation of the story?
I don't know about this particular case, but it can, yeah.
Okay.
I think the story, it would be like if I told both of you my story and asked each of you to write a half of it. You guys would collaborate a little, but ultimately it would depend on your voice as a writer. And maybe Jerry Taylor's, voice just went in a different direction than Michael Piller's does. But I don't have a complaint.
So I would have said that was like that, like the director had more influence on that.
In Booby Trap, here's an interesting thing. In Booby Trap, Guinan tells Geordie LaForge she is attracted to bald men because long ago one was very kind to her. We actually mentioned that when we talked about that episode discussion. In Ensign Ro, Guinan tells Ro Laren that an old man helped her out when she was in serious trouble. Both references are seen here when Picard saves her life in the 19th century. We forgot to mention that in our summary.
Well, I mean that might, I don't know. Do you think that's it?
I think so, actually, because we actually talked about it in both instances. Knowing what we know now, it seems like,
that Picard is the old man.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so.
She's totally referring to Captain Picard.
No,
I don't think so.
Data spent it, and it could be more. Who knows where old man Picard will go in terms of time travel? It could be possible.
You and your old man Picard, right?
It could be possible that old man Picard has more adventures with Guinan in the future. Data spends the rest of his life with a head I mentioned this, that's more than 500 years old. The age of his head never seemed to affect him, nor was the fact ever mentioned again. It is possible that Geordi brought the 500-year-old head back up to spec when it was returned to the 24th century.
Okay, but that's so that's the TNG one. The TNG one is Data's head is 500 years old. The Deep Space Nine one is that O'Brien dies and is replaced by another O'Brien from 5 minutes in the past or 5 minutes in the future or something, right?
Yeah.
And in Voyager, Harry Kim dies, and so does the baby, Naomi, and they're replaced by the doppelganger Harry Kim and the doppelganger baby from the other Voyager.
Whoa.
And then so Harry Kim dies in episode in season 2. And so does the baby, and they actually jack the Kim and the baby from the other Enterprise Voyager that disappears, and so you follow a different Kim from that point on.
Yeah, I vaguely remember something about
it's never referred to again or explained again. But then we have the wrong Kim and the wrong O'Brien and the wrong baby and the wrong Data's head.
And a second Riker running around. Let's not forget
and a second Riker, which has an appearance on Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
Did you keen-eyed Trekkies notice who Samuel Clemens as an actor is?
Sybok.
Jerry Hardin, and it says here that he was Radu, which I remember on the episode Broken Bat when the bow breaks. Remember Radu?
I liked it better when it was Sybok. I don't know.
And in Voyager's episode Emanations, he's going to play someone called Neria. So he comes back to Star Trek in Voyager.
I really hope we see Sybok in this season of Discovery. I don't think we will. I really hope. I really want. I want a young Sybok.
I wanted to.
I want a young Sybok. I want one piece of Star Trek content that isn't Star Trek 5 that acknowledges Sybok. Because
you want to take away Star Trek's power, Star Trek 5's power. You want to take it away from Star Trek 5?
The funny thing with Star Trek canon, the current explanation of Star Trek canon as you read it could actually exclude Star Trek 5.
What?
All right.
No.
If you were to read it.
You can never take Star Trek 5 out of the equation. You're wrong. You are wrong.
I need my pain.
If you want to read it,
too.
If you want to read it, you can.
Away. I don't want to take my pain taken away.
And I want to see some young Sybok running around.
A Prince of Vulcan.
Talking about
you realize
talking about space Jesus or something.
No one ever talks about the fact that
the Vulcan princess
was married to a Vulcan princess. So Sybok is
a Vulcan princess.
Yeah, he's a Prince of Vulcan. Instead of Prince of Persia, you can have Prince of Vulcan. Yes, he's a
no
prince.
one wants to see a show about Sybok.
Yes, I would. I totally would watch a show about Sybok. Sybok, the Prince of Vulcan, on CW.
Notice they didn't even put Star Trek in the title. Just Sybok. The Prince of Vulcan. I mean, that'll get him. Okay, that could be a short tricks.
We have a short treks to do after this. By the way, Doctor, if you want to hang out for that.
So are we going to wrap this up?
Yes, I think. Well, I other than giving some mention to Jerry Hardin, which I wanted to do because I was totally. I totally enjoyed Samuel Clemens, the performance, the characterization, etc., etc.
I was convinced by the sets, props, and acting in this
Yeah, I want to say that it's definitely not the
episode.
best.
I don't know about you guys, but
it's not the best in if you were to start rating all the season closing endings together, this is definitely not the worst and it's definitely not the best, but I thought it was great. And that's why I'm giving it in its context here a 10. There you go. And that Gary would probably give it a 10 also. And now it's your turn.
you can't just assume Gary would give it a 10. Come on.
No, I think we can assume Gary would give it a 10. It's safe to say Gary would give it a 10.
Gary would also give
I refuse to assume things.
Especially after Sal just gave it a 10. You just jump right on and say yes.
So what are the real ratings, gentlemen?
What are the real ratings? Hold on.
You should just go next, Doctor. We should save yours for last.
Well, yeah, no. I think it's obvious what mine is.
I can't imagine.
I think Sean is probably closer to the real rating.
Let's find out.
Okay, well, here's the thing. I gave part 1 a 9. Apparently,
that's right. You did. I saw that,
and I came into this discussion saying that part 2 is better than part 1.
It is. You were right.
That would make it a very high rating.
Don't let the Prince of Vulcan. You can do 9.1. Come on.
But then he bugs me with the piece of tinfoil in the brain, right?
You see,
he ripped his Doritos packet open and then put a pot in there.
I meant to talk to you about that. First of all, Captain Picard has a basic understanding of androids, right? Like he's been working with Data. He's pretty technically proficient.
No, he doesn't.
You remember that scene? You remember that scene where Data talks about his mind and he says, "I have a part 4 instead of a part 3," and he's like, type R.
But it implies, hang on, it implies that he's been studying at least. He might have been studying a different type of. He might have been understanding a different type.
Oh god.
Anyways, it's obvious that he's able to encrypt a message using binary, which is what Data actually says in the episode, is that he uses a binary encoding system to send a message, and he's able to, like, in the similar fashion, I'll admit, it's the same as like when Picard suddenly awakens as a Borg and grabs onto Geordi's arm and says, sleep, right? Sleep, Data. It's like a similar, kind of anxiety-inducing moment where Data wakes up suddenly and he's like, "No torpedo."
You can't fix it. You
yes.
can't. He broke it.
I say Picard.
The doctor talked about the popcorn that's stuck in his in his brain, and now it's broken. So it's the episode is being demoted to not being as good as part 1, and it doesn't break TNG tradition. TNG has solid part 1s and weak part 2s, but I still like the episode. I enjoy the episode, and I'm fine.
Boo!
Hey, the truth hurts, man.
Boo!
Boo!
Give us the truth.
With your Prince Company references. All right.
That was nice. I tied it in. You
did tie it in. 8. I give it an 8.
Oh my goodness.
I give it an 8, which is still probably very high.
It's still pretty high. Yeah.
But it is lower than 9. So,
all right, Doctor.
There we go. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. I give it a 3.
Oh, it's higher than I expected. I'm actually pleased.
It's a 3.
Based on the way you were carrying on, I was thinking you were going to give it a 1. So
okay, so this is TNG we're talking about, and you're giving it 3. I mean, Discovery is like a -12, right, for you?
Yeah, absolutely.
God damn.
Absolutely, yeah. This is a 3. This is a 3. No, right. Because like you said, the production values are good, and the costumes are nice.
There's a lot of effort. Right?
Can we negotiate a 4? Can we negotiate a 4, Doctor?
No.
Negotiate ratings. Come on.
Is that your final answer?
This is not the government shutdown, sir.
Wow.
All right. No.
So Sahel gives you, right? Sahel gives you the option to rate the episode, but then he only gives you 4 choices, like 10, 9, 8, 7. You have to vote for one.
Wow. I am not the dictator of Star Trek. Anyways, maybe. Anyways, on that note,
Okay.
I am so pleased that we got together for another exciting episode of Starfleet Boy. This was one of the most challenging ones. I had trouble with your opinions today, Doctor, so I really enjoyed it.
You also had trouble with our summaries.
Well, I did. Okay, fair. To be fair, I couldn't believe how bad those summaries were starting to sound out. You guys saved it at the end. It came together nicely.
Well, I didn't.
And if you want to hear, I think, obviously I should have just given my episode summary. I did pass it on, so I was a sore sport there. I shouldn't have interrupted so many times. I apologize. There. See, Starfleet Boy can't apologize. It can happen. Wow. No answer from the peanut gallery. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks a lot. Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper too.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.
Bye.